you've given me my wife back. He was in tears in my office with this cake. And every year for the next 15 years I worked in England, he'd come to my office with a cake at Christmas.
When we started Leon, people said, wow, good fast food. That's an incredible idea. And we were like, no, it's not. It just, in the right parallel universe, it already exists.
There was always a part of me that wanted to do good in the world, but I just didn't know how to. I just had that rebound effect as well from having such a heavy, low vibrational, low consciousness upbringing to finding this new world. I'd get so deep into self-hypnosis and so immersed in it that the bed would be vibrating.
What was that from?
Energy. You've got to allow that flow, that ebb and flow of abundance. And also when abundance comes, be generous with it. I never realised that I could heal myself from the inside out. Because I wanted to heal so much, I eventually found this path that allowed me to do that. Don't allow your thoughts to control you, especially if you get into a negative cycle.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Glenn Harrold. How are you, Glenn?
I'm all good, thank you, John.
I was supposed to be in Portugal, mate, and I'm so gutted that it's obviously a great country, Britain, right? But I'm gutted I'm not with you.
It's lovely at the moment. The weather's sun shining and it's just all good out here. Really lovely. But, another time.
Well, I look forward to it. Well, this is the first time we've done this on Riverside, so I'm actually excited to test the tech. There's been 5 minutes of me screwing it up so far, so you stayed very calm. So your shit works. Well
it wouldn't
done.
be any good if I come on all stressed and stressing about stuff. So got to walk my talk.
So, Glenn, let me tell you, I think I told you how I know you. I'm going to tell you how I know you and remind you. So I have a friend called Tony Dix, good name. And I think I was a bit stressed one day. She said, look, go and lie down on this beamer mat, this PMF mat, go on this beamer mat, put this red light stuff on your, thing on your face and listen to these solfeggio things.
Right.
And then this normal bloke comes over the headphones going, so basically, right, this frequency is all about self-healing. I'm like, this is my kind of hypnosis, a normal bloke telling me what to do.
That's my posh voice as well.
I know, you did say the other day, that's my posh voice.
I can't do it any posher. That's it.
It was such a for people that want a normal bloke telling them how to relax. I can't recommend you highly enough, Glenn.
So did you went with it, did you? You went down into a relaxed state?
Yeah. I think I probably went to a garden or somewhere, didn't I, for one of them? I went to like this then there's water.
Well, they're all different. They're based on the meditation is based on the tone, the actual frequency and what the properties are of that frequency. So for the example, the 396 hertz solfeggio tone is the root chakra one. It's the base one. So I think that's in a crystal temple, and you lay on a bed and you get the the frequencies pulsing through you, and the meditation is all based around that and the color of red and that base frequency. And so it's a kind of a combination of the frequency itself. Ali Calderwood's music, who I made it with, he made the tone, the actual frequency, and my meditation delivery. The combination of those three things made it a bit different. And we've always had good feedback on those titles.
Well, Glenn, it's brilliant. And look, this podcast is about going the whole gamut from the real sort of like what you might call cutting edge Western medicine around things like immunotherapy or peptides, right the way back to ancient philosophies, ancient methods. And these frequencies, they've been used for millennia, right?
Yeah. I mean, Gregorian monks used to chant these exact frequencies to invoke certain states. So with the 396 hertz, they'd invoke a certain chant at that frequency that would help people to release feelings of guilt, fear, regret and shame, that kind of thing. So it's pretty powerful if you think a frequency can hold a vibration that can activate you in that way to release those emotions and those, deeply held feelings. So they're incredibly powerful.
We're going to do some more work on this podcast on frequency medicine. We know, don't we, from a bioresonance perspective, they're used by mainstream doctors across Europe, less so in the UK. It's seen as slightly more marginalised in the UK, frequency medicine.
Yeah.
But, I have a doctor who was medical director at Canyon Ranch in America, and he was explaining that we're now using frequencies to encourage organs to secrete certain things like insulin, for example. So he was saying that, physics, almost as the father or mother science, can actually sit above biology and chemistry and actually ensure that the organs are reacting in a certain way based on frequency. So I think all of these things, joining the dots on all of these frequency ideas is very important, right from what people might call the fringe, right through to things that are being used in hospitals.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff, isn't it, when you think about it, and it heals you from the deepest part of you, on a cellular level, DNA level, and if you're working on that part, then everything else falls into place, doesn't it? It's incredible.
I hope we're going to cover that. What we're going to do is to start, Glenn, very much with you. I think it's important. This isn't just like random preamble with you. This is fundamental to your experience with hypnosis and with, I guess, meditation and frequencies. Your story and how you were a very naughty boy. You're not just a messiah. You were a very naughty boy. Yeah?
I was a naughty boy back in the day. I was... definitely not the messiah. I kind of grew up in a very dysfunctional household, very violent household. And so from a young age, I would run away from home. And, from the age of 12, I'd sleep on the streets and kind of got, no qualifications when I left school, got expelled from school when I was 15. I was very much a product of my environment. Yeah. Because my home life was so bad, I was just a product of that. I ended up hanging around in a gang of kids who all came from... I actually grew up in quite a nice area because my dad was sort of middle... he'd made a little bit of money and we had a decent house.
Where was that? Where was that, in London?
That was... I was born in Balham, and when I was about 6 or 7, we moved out to Orpington. My dad made a few quid and moved out to Orpington, bought a nice 4-bedroom house. And... but, you can live in a mansion, you can live in a huge mansion, but if you're dysfunctional, it doesn't matter. You're going to display those characteristics and have a crazy messed up life. And so I sort of navigated my way into this gang of kids who all came from similar backgrounds, very messed up families, and got into a lot of trouble, back in the day. But kind of there was always a part of me that wanted to do good in the world, but I just didn't know how to. I'd had very negative experiences, even seeing my mother and father's relationship. It was so violent and toxic. So that's all I really knew. That's all I understood. And when you grow up in that, you don't know it's a bad childhood. You just are in it and you're reacting to what's happening to you. And the one thing that took me out of that was that I learned to play the bass guitar when I was 17. And I joined a band at that time because I was into the punk scene when I was a sort of 15, 16, and I loved the Sex Pistols and the Clash, this angry music. It just spoke to me. It was right up my street. But I used to watch the bands and they would be getting, the audience would spit on them. And I thought, I don't want that. I don't want to be up on stage getting gobbed
Not for me, thanks.
Not for me. So I waited till the new romantic thing came along. I thought, that's for me. I'm more of a pretty boy, I'm a bit too. I'm not tough enough for the other stuff. So I joined a band at that time, and I loved it. For the first time in my life, I had a positive outlet, and I learned to play the bass guitar. And fortunately enough, the guy that I'd partnered up with, he was a really talented singer. And within 3 years, we'd won like the National Battle of the Bands pop competition. We were on stage at Hammersmith Odeon. We won 10 grand. Paul Gambaccini was the top judge. And it was like, oh, amazing. It was all everything I wanted. But it was kind of, even though I had all that, I still didn't feel I was worthy of it. I still put all the success down to the other guys because my self-esteem was on the floor. And even though, tasting success for the first time, it just I didn't feel worthy of it, or, so that was, I knew I had to fix that part of me.
How old were you then? And remind us how old you would have been.
So at that point when we won the competition, I was about 19.
Wow.
And it didn't last long. We had a showcase with the biggest record company in the UK at the time. We had every record company chasing us, but we did the showcase and we blew it.
What was it called, the band?
We were called the Sugar Ray 5.
And then could people, the Sugar Ray 5, yeah? Not Sugar A, but Sugar Ray.
Sugar Ray, like the boxer.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the singer and his brothers, who were all part of the band, were all amateur boxers.
Right.
So we were called the Sugar Ray 5. And we had a great time. For 3 months, we were getting recognised and signing autographs. And we had this money that we'd come into and had a fabulous few months. But then it all disappeared. It all imploded as quickly as it happened. And I think when I look back, it was a good thing. Because becoming, rich and famous or a pop star at a young age, it's only the very grounded who get through that.
People Look at Robbie Williams, right? I mean, like struggling after drugs.
Yeah, George Michael and all that. You've got to come from a solid family. You've got to know yourself. You've got to be grounded. And I was none of those things. And we were doing, way too many drugs. We were kind of doing the sex and drugs before we got famous. We should have, the Rolling Stones waited till they got famous, then they did it. We did it all too early. It all imploded. And so after that, I was on I couldn't hold down a proper job after that because having that taste of that, I couldn't then go and work on a building site or, do a normal job because I just hankered after that fame and fortune that I'd had a taste of. So I ended up on the cabaret circuit. And I was playing in a duo, and it was one night we shared the bill with a stage hypnotist, and I watched him, getting people up on stage and making them do outrageous things, dance around like chickens and make love to broomsticks. And I thought, wow, that is so powerful, so amazing. And I wanted to learn everything I could about it. But I knew then I didn't want to do the stage thing. I didn't want to do the entertainment because, I'd kind of been at the arse end of the entertainment world for a while doing the cabaret thing. Yeah. So I wanted to do it for the healing. I saw something in it that I thought I can heal a lot of my childhood dysfunction and self-esteem and traumas that I'd experienced. So it was from there that I did a 2-year diploma with the British School of Clinical Hypnosis, and I loved it. And I, everything I learned, even sitting in a classroom for the first time again, I felt panicky. Even though I was like in my late 20s, I felt anxious and panicky sitting in a classroom because my only experience of that was very negative from my school days. So, but this time I was learning these techniques and using them to get over these traumas as they'd arise. So with that one, I literally put myself into a state of self-hypnosis and visualize myself sitting in the classroom and feeling really positive and also clearing away the memories that I had of being in school. And I found that when I did that repeatedly, I then could sit in the classroom and feel positive. I felt good when I was actually there, and I started to, enjoy the lessons, and it was a completely different experience. So, and again, in that moment, I learned that I could overcome a lot of these failure programs and these sabotage patterns that had plagued my life up to that point. And so I kind of systematically worked through all these things I'd gone through as a kid and just found that life changed. And suddenly I started meeting more positive people and finding opportunities coming along for the first time. And I loved it. And I just had that rebound effect as well from having such a heavy, low vibrational, low consciousness upbringing to finding this new world. I just wanted that so badly. And it was like a catapult. I just threw myself into it, and I would literally meditate for an hour a day, every single day, visualizing the life that I wanted to create and the life that I wanted to step into. And I was so hungry for it. And I think that's the thing. You've got to really want to transform. And that's the power behind it. You've got to get that fire in your belly and think, I'm going to build a daily meditation practice where I'm in this and I'm working on these things and projecting out the life that I want to live. And because that was such a strong desire in me, I think that kind of really took me on a different path very quickly.
Glenn, we talk about energy, we talk about consciousness. These are words which to some people are very obvious because they've been part of the world where those words are used, energy and consciousness. And some people are intrigued by them, and some people are very much turned off by them because they believe that we're talking crap when we're talking about energy and consciousness. But what is clearly happening at that stage in your life is what many people would call a raising of vibration. You've referred to the previously low vibrational energy of what you experienced before. In a nutshell, how would you explain to people using that experience, that transformational experience, what you and I and others maybe mean by energy, vibration, consciousness? How it's difficult to rationalize, right? So words may not be good, it may not serve us well to describe it, but how can you describe in rational, in words, what we mean by that?
That's a good question. And I think that we are, incredibly powerful beings. And when we are projecting out positive thoughts, positive feelings, our intentions are positive, the external world responds to that. And they've even proven that in studies where you can, Dr. Emoto, the Japanese scientist, he did these studies on the crystalline structure of water that had been, there was one Petri dish that had very positive thoughts and words said to it and focused on it. And under a microscopic environment, he studied the what do you call it? The water, the crystalline structure. And it was very beautiful, beautiful fractals, and it looked amazing. And the other Petri dish, which had very negative thoughts and energy focused on it, it was completely different. It was very dark. And so it shows that I haven't explained that.
No, you have.
Well. It's a long time.
I think people can go online and look at that. I mean, there are quite a few people that have tried to debunk his work to try to say, oh, it's not replicable. But even if it is or isn't replicable, the fact is there are lots of other examples in addition to his work, which show that the energy that you give off based on your thoughts, and the stories that you tell yourself very much impacts other people's behaviors, and maybe attract different outcomes.
It really does. You can. There's been other studies. I watched a clip on YouTube just recently of a guy that had 3 rice dishes. Rice and water, these 3 dishes, and one was given very positive affirmations and feelings of love. The second one was neutral, and the third one was given hate speeches and told it was horrible and that kind of thing. And I actually found that the one that was given all the negativity, that went very moldy very quickly. And then the second dish was kind of, it took a couple of weeks and then it went moldy. And the third dish lasted for months and it would stay, it looked like rice after months and months. So I keep meaning to do that. We've got to get some dishes and we're going to do that with our kids.
We need to do a good controlled trial on that. That would be very interesting.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to definitely do it.
Let's do it.
I'm going to do it because my kids are learning. They're 10 and 8 and I want them to learn these things. And the best way to teach them, you can tell them till you're blue in the face, but if you show them something like that, they'll remember it forever. So I'm going to do it.
That would be a fun experiment, Glenn.
Yeah.
So look, we know that when sports people are about to take a penalty or in rugby a conversion, that if they tell themselves stories or they remember occasions when it has worked before, that creates a mindset, that creates a set of behaviors.
Yeah.
And of course, the stories that we tell ourselves are our reality, more than actually the reality itself in objective terms. So, I guess what you do is you help people to tell themselves the right stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the repetition of it that really makes it work. And it's, the thing is, people kind of, they see you on a podcast like this or whatever, and they think, oh, you've got it all sorted, you've got it worked out. And it's not the case. Real life is what it is. And you have days when you wake up and you just feel like crap first thing in the morning. You feel full of negative thoughts and you think, why do I feel like that? And years ago, before I had the consciousness to come out of that, I'd stay stuck in that. I'd feel like it was going to be a bad day, and it would be. And I'd expect bad things to happen, and sure enough, they would. But what I've learned over the years is that never to stay in that state for long. So if ever I get stuck in a negative cycle, or I get into a negative cycle, I snap out of it quick, because I've got all these tools that I've learned over the years. And I think that's the real thing to adopt in this. You're never going to expect perfection in life, because life is very challenging. You get curveballs and all kinds of things happen. And so you develop a set of tools that help you overcome the ups and downs of life and build an inner strength that helps you get through whatever comes along.
I think to that point, then we had someone called Steve Head. He was a positivity coach for us in Leon, transformational, actually. And he would say the same thing. Do you think I wasn't born positive? I don't get out of bed every day and I'm positive, but there are things that I can do. There are techniques that I use. And as a result of those, I have a better day, and therefore I have a better life. And I think that it is really important that we joked earlier about, you're not the Messiah, you're a very naughty boy. We're all just very naughty boys. And I think it's important for people to know that, as you say, that sometimes you feel shit, don't you? Do you know what I mean? You get out of bed, and a number of times I've been annoyed with my wife, and she's like, "Why?" I said, "Well, I've just had a dream that you've had an affair." And she's like, and I'm annoyed at her for 2 hours. And then eventually I realised that it is just a dream and she hasn't actually had an affair.
she's getting a rough deal at that moment.
It's not even her fault. But so what are these? Do you want to talk about these techniques now, or do you want to talk about more the principles of how you got into hypnosis? Or
I'm happy to do that. I think, sometimes a good thing to do, especially if you're stuck in a negative thought process or a pattern, or you're stressing over something, is to recognize that you're not always the product of your own thoughts. Your thoughts are coming from lots of different places. If you suddenly flick on the news and it's a very heavy negative story, or there's something happening in the world that you don't agree with, then it can take you to another place. But really, that's got nothing to do with you. If you imagine you've got this hidden observer part of your brain that can observe your thoughts, and you recognize that a lot of your thoughts are not your own. They're coming from or being stimulated from external places and
stimuluses.
So you take control in that way. If you understand that you can observe your thoughts and you can step back from them and look at them from a more neutral place, you kind of negate them. You take away the negativity, the fear around them, and you step into a mindful space where your thoughts are not controlling you. So I think that's a big one. Don't allow your thoughts to control you, especially if you get into a negative cycle. Snap out of it. Sometimes you can do something different. You can go for a run or a jog, or just take yourself out of it. And there's lots of different ways to do that. Meditation is the best way. If ever you've got to make a decision and you're struggling which way to go, and you're ruminating over it, and it's going over and over in your thought processes, just come out of that for a minute and allow yourself to drop down. I used to use self-hypnosis when I started. That was my tool for getting into a very relaxed mental state. And you kind of, with that, you allow yourself to drift out of the conscious mind and go beyond your ego, down into your inner consciousness. And then when you're in that state, you're not thinking, you're not doing, you're just in a state of being, and you're very still and you're very calm. And you find if you do that, even for 15, 20 minutes, you activate your creative mind when you do that. And when you come back out, you often find you'll get the solution to whatever dilemma you've got, because you've quietened the monkey mind part, the left brain, that's gone quiet, and you've activated this creative genius part of yourself that we've all got. and you come back with these solutions and you navigate your way much more creatively.
I think I wrote a book which I've got somewhere here called Winning Not Fighting. It's about the martial art Wing Chun that I do with Julian. And in it, we talk about how the rational brain likes to think it's in control, but it isn't.
Yeah.
And, Alan Watts would say, similarly, words are a good servant, but a bad master. And in looking at some of the Taoist principles of not forcing, I think it's very important for us to understand when to access both love and instinct. And I did an exercise actually in Italy with a group about 5 weeks ago. An exercise that I did with this team was they all had these different life or business problems. And, I asked them to put their hands on their gut to ask their instincts what the answer was. I asked them to put their hands on their heart to understand what their sort of love instinct was, and then to put their hands on their head to say, what do they rationally think? And it was very interesting, the different answers. And then the combined answers they got from accessing, as you say, intuition. And it's in Jungian terminology, he would say that actually thinking and heart and emotion, we can decide whether heart is emotional or not, but thinking and emotion, they're both rational because they're both on and off. This is one and all logic. This is likey or no likey. Do I like this? Do I feel good or not feel good? But your gut deals with complexity at an instinctive level in a way that isn't just on and off, likey or no likey. It can deal with that. So getting access to your intuition, which is actually smarter, can handle multiple inputs and multiple outputs, and it can synthesize information in a very complex way, your subconscious and your gut. I think it's important for people to understand that when they are grounded in that way, and maybe some of your solfeggio frequencies allow people to get to that level, to get to that chakra, to get to gut feeling.
Yeah.
It's very important to access. I'm not saying we mustn't be logical. It's not saying we mustn't apply the rational mind, but it's a balance, isn't it? A psychic totality that Carl Jung talks about, that you're helping people access.
Yeah. And the simple way to get to that place is through self-hypnosis. A simple technique where you're counting down and slowing your breathing down and clearing away thoughts just takes you down into that space where your intuition is activated. And it's like we've all got this superpower, because we're the only species on the planet, this is a little bit debatable, but by and large, we're the only species on the planet that doesn't use all of our brain all the time. So when we do access this greater part of our mind, we're in our intuition, we're in the genius part of us, the superhuman part, the part that's got unlimited potential and strength. I love the story of where a kid will get trapped under a car. And it's been well documented around the world, where the mother will walk up to the car, pick it up and pull the kid out, because something deeply primal kicks in at that time, this superhuman access to that part of themselves where they don't stop for a minute and think that car weighs half a ton, I can't pick it up. And they just do it. And we've all got that part is in us. And by using self-hypnosis and meditation regularly, having a daily practice, you activate that part more and more, and you get stronger and more powerful in that way. And it's just an incredible way to live your life. And a good analogy of that is if you wanted to build a really super fit, healthy physique, you'd go to the gym 4 times a week, you'd work out, you put a lot of effort in. And the same is with the mind. If you want to have that, utilize that power and potential that we've got, you have a regular daily meditation practice and you work on mindfulness and you do your affirmations, your chanting, you have a spiritual practice that you build into your week, and it just helps you. The whole thing of doing that, and going back to consciousness, you start to raise your consciousness. And I've lived my life where I know what it's like to be in a state of low consciousness, where I'm, drink and drugs and is kind of become just completely normal and something you do. And, those things lower your vibration to a point where you can't see clearly. You can't, you've got this fog and you can't interact with the outside world, only with other people who are in the same state. You naturally connect with people in the same state, but when you're conscious and awake, it's different.
Let's look at the Toltec tradition. Don Miguel Ruiz, do you know him at all?
Yeah.
He wrote a book called The Four Agreements.
Four Agreements, yeah.
I've not read
it, but I've heard a lot about it.
Just like Stephen Covey wrote The Eighth Habit, he probably wrote The Fifth Agreement. I think he did. His next book was great. It was like the only four agreements you need. The next book, and the Fifth Agreement.
He found another one.
However, one of the key ones there, was, it's based on the principle really of the Toltec understanding, which is when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror, there is smoke in between us and the mirror. And this smoke is obfuscation. It's stories that we're told. It's unhelpful beliefs. It's the idea that we cannot sing, which in my case is true. But in some cases is not true, most people. And all of this fog between us and the mirror is all of the unhelpful, actually not true, made up stories, dreams, he calls them. Not dreams as in, have you got a dream, but dreams as in confusions. And I think becoming conscious is recognizing that those are not real. It's recognizing the fact that some of the stories that society tells itself, stories that we tell ourselves, stories about relationships, they are just simply not true. And consciousness is in part recognizing how wrong and illusory that smoke is, those dreams.
And going beyond them. And also changing them, because a lot of those stories come from your childhood, the things you were taught about yourself in childhood.
Yep.
And for me, there was a mountain of like negativity and limitation.
Yep.
So I had to work through those. And, thankfully I found the tools in hypnotherapy and a number of other therapies, kinesiology and later on plant medicine, ayahuasca and things like that cleared so much more. And I found that every time I would clear more and more, I'd just become lighter and more like my authentic self, the person I was supposed to be without having two nutty parents who messed it all up.
I'm not going to go too much into your parents, because we can do, but I mean, that's, in the traditions of Wing Chun, in the idea of the Enneagram that I do a lot of work on, is the idea that we have a true self that you're describing, Glenn. That's that self which, when accessed, is most relaxed, most abundant, most loving, most connected, most whole.
Yeah.
But it is confused by an ego which is driven by made up fears. So those made up fears are akin to that smoke. And it's about how you strip away all of those unhelpful fears, how you access love, and how you become what you're describing as that more authentic, or what I would call the true self. And that's the gift that you give people, Glenn, that I've seen in the work that you do.
I think it's an opportunity for all of us. This lifetime's a golden opportunity for us to work through all those things and clear them, because but it's becoming conscious and aware of them in the first place that allows you to do that. I never realized that I could heal myself from the inside out. That was just a new concept, but because I wanted to heal so much, I eventually found this path that allowed me to do that. And it's so liberating when you do that. And in my work, when I started to see clients after I qualified as a hypnotherapist, and I started to help people over lifelong phobias and fears and anxiety issues, in one session of hypnotherapy, you can clear these things that have been with them since they were 5 years old, and held them down, held them back. And it just blew me away that I could, because I'd learnt these skills, I could use them to help people progress so quickly. And it was just such a wonderful thing.
Glenn, you helped me with the, you don't know it, but with the meditations and the solfeggio scales that are available. Actually, if people are watching this, they want to access you, which we're going to come back to later. Spotify, Apple. Do you have your own website as well, Glenn, that people can access?
glennharrold.com.
I mean, all of these resources, really fun, really powerful. where I really want to come back to consciousness in a minute. And I think, there are examples of when a mum or dad is tired and the daughter or son is singing and they say, "Oh my God, will you shut up with your singing?" And that little moment can stop that kid singing forever.
Yeah.
And they may not even know, because they were 5 years old when that happened.
Yeah.
They may not become ever quite conscious that was the reason. But those little bits of programming, like you must finish your, if someone doesn't want to finish their soup because they've actually had enough soup, and then someone says, do you realize how lucky you are to have soup and how many people are starving in this world? They then start to have a guilty relationship with finishing or not finishing their food. But actually, their natural instinct said, "I'm full. I don't need any more soup."
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's all of those things which we've inherited without realizing, and becoming conscious that the fact that they exist. We may not become conscious of every single last bit of programming, but we can at least start to recognize those patterns.
And I think what happens is, over time, when you start working through these things, more and more things come up. And it's kind of, it's that thing of peeling layers of the onion. You take off a layer and you think, that's great, I feel lighter. But then other things come up and you continue. And over time, you just get lighter and lighter and, more like your authentic self, as I said. But a good example of what you were saying there was, I in a therapy session, when I really got into therapy, and I was working on abundance, because up until I was 30, in my early 30s, I'd been flat broke, driven old bangers of cars and, always in debt and bailiffs and all kinds, really messed up when I was younger. And it was, so I started to visualize what I wanted, projecting out these goals, big house, villa in Florida, Aston Martin, all these.
A house in Portugal.
I was a young, ended up in Portugal. All of these things they were material goals. I was a young man. I wanted to taste that life for the first time. But one of the things that came up early on in this was I regressed back to being 5 years of age and standing there and hearing my mum and dad, seeing and hearing my mum and dad having a blazing row. My dad screaming at my mum, ripping money up, throwing it at my mum. And I was 5 years of age, learning in that moment that money causes massive stress, arguments. So I had this very negative association with money that I only uncovered when I was in the trance state. I'd forgotten all about it, because sometimes when things like that happen as a kid, you dissociate. You dissociate because it's too traumatic. So I went back to this memory and I revisited it from an adult perspective, and I was able to process it, go through it, and let it go, release it with love. And after that time, I found that money started coming my way for the first time, and opportunities. And I did end up with the Aston Martin and the villa in Florida, all of those things. But I'm convinced without that one therapy session doing that work, it wouldn't have happened. I'd have sabotaged. I'd have carried on blowing opportunities because this was rattling around in my unconscious.
Well, listen, Leo Pruneboom, by the time this goes out, Glenn, people will have had the opportunity to hear the episode with Leo Pruneboom, who is a professor, he's a doctor of, not a medical doctor, but he's a doctor, a scientist. So not a practicing medical doctor, but a scientist of medicine, who understands something called CPNI. I think it's cognitive psychoneuroimmunology. Someone, I will correct that with a little correction if it's not true, but I think it's CPNI. And he tells the story of how he had this terrible skin condition, and he suddenly realized that it was to do with the relationship with his dad, and he'd lied to his dad. He told his dad at a time that he loved him, and actually it was a time when he hated him, and he felt so guilty that he'd said, "I love you, Dad." And when I didn't love him, and I should have been honest because I was so upset, within 4 hours, this skin condition he'd had for 15 years completely disappeared.
Wow.
And the fact that change can happen in an instant in the type of hypnotherapy sessions that you describe is really important, because it's setting you off in a completely new and positive direction, having dealt with this. And I sometimes think about it as a sponsoring thought that sits above and controls everything. And that sponsoring thought has got sons and daughters. it's almost like trying to find Mr. Big in a drug ring. Right, you could deal with the local drug dealers, you could deal with the intermediate drug dealers, but at some point you've got to get to Mr. Big or Mrs. Big. In the case of that, that South American woman. But unless you've got to Mr. Big, that sponsoring thought, which was in your case that relationship with money based on that experience of the row with your mum and dad, it's difficult because you can deal with the subordinated thoughts that come from that big thought, but you've got to identify what is that big thing that's fucking you up.
You've got to get to the root cause, the heart of it, because when you get to the heart of it, like you say, all of those other things that are built on top, you can deal with them as they come up, but if you're not getting to the heart, it just carries on. The problem continues. So, a huge part of my work has been, I used to do a lot of work with regression to cause, because if you go back to the child that, picked up the trauma in the first place, and you work with that, you break it all down. You change it.
And how does that happen? So for someone watching this, well, first of all, do you have any other examples or stories that you can remember or recall that are about that?
Yeah, I saw, it was quite early on in my career when I saw a husband who had an issue. I can't remember. I worked with him and he said, look, could you help my wife? She's agoraphobic. She can't go out the house. She's really struggling. She wants to live a normal life, but she just can't. And so he brought her along. She was very fragile and very nervous. And so he sat in on the therapy sessions, and she'd been under the doctor for a long, long time and tried every sort of mainstream medical treatment, and nothing was helping her. And in this one session, I remember regressing her back to the root cause of what she was telling me. She was telling me the story, and I went back, and she went back to being an 8-year-old girl, and she had a full regression, which is where, and it doesn't happen very often in therapy, but it's where they actually talk and act as an 8-year-old kid. So this lady suddenly she started rocking her feet back and forward and, acting like an 8-year-old girl. She was having a full-on regression. And her husband's sitting there. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Suddenly seeing her. And all of this stuff came out that she'd buried around some horrendous sexual abuse. It had been so bad, she just dissociated to the point where she couldn't ever go there. But in this therapy session, she had this full regression and it all came up and out, and she burst into tears and just had this massive abreaction. And really, I didn't need to do much else. It was like I'd unlocked a gasket and it just blew. And she cried for days after that. He told me, at first it was quite worrying because I did all the appropriate therapeutic interventions where, I told her how to process this stuff that had come up. And I was seeing her the following week. But the first few days, she just bawled, and her husband was messaging me saying, I'm really worried. I said, look, just stay in it. This is a good thing. She's releasing a lot of pent up trauma and emotion. And it all came out. And she came back the next week, and I did another therapy session. She was I could tell it had helped her a lot. I did another therapy session. It wasn't as heavy, wasn't as deep. And then I didn't see them again. And it was then at Christmas, she came back at Christmas. They brought me in this big cake into my office when I was working in England. And she said, you've given me my wife back. She said, I've got my wife back. And he was in tears in my office with this cake. And every year for the next 15 years I worked in England, he'd come to my office with a cake at Christmas because they ended up cycling from John O'Groats to Land's End. They wrote a book on it, their life before this therapy session and after it. It was probably the most profound therapy session ever. She said for the first time she could cuddle her kids, her grown-up sons again. Wow. It was so life-changing.
Oh, clever, well done.
And yeah, it's just a wonderful job when you have a end result like that, and that's one that's always stuck in my mind, because it was such a transformation. She was just going to go down, 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 but allowing in the therapeutic space, allowing her to, released that. It was just so transformative.
Well, Glenn, my daughter, I keep saying to her, look, your mum and dad fucked you up. I love you very, very much. I bet you I wasn't the perfect, I wasn't the perfect dad. Just fucking work it out, whatever I did to harm you, whatever it is. I can't think of anything. You can't think of anything, but maybe there is something. Maybe there is something. Maybe I took the television away when you were 3. Or something. I don't know.
None of us are perfect, are we? We're only operating from the state of level of consciousness we're at that time.
Yeah.
My wife and myself, she's a hypnotherapist as well.
Right.
And we got 2 young kids who are 10 and 8, and they're gorgeous kids. We adore them. And, but we think we're getting it all right. We think we're making the right decisions. But as you know, kids can test your boundaries and limits. They're trying to find their boundaries, and I'm sure there'll still be things, even though we're conscious and we're therapists, And when I look back at my parents, that one of the big releases that I had was not playing the victim, coming out of that victim mentality. My life was so shite because my parents were so shite. Once I took responsibility for the way I was operating in the world, and I forgave them because they were only operating from a level of consciousness that they were at, and they were a product of their own messed up childhoods. So it's that cycle. And I think the biggest gift you can give your kids is to try and break that cycle.
And absolutely, Glenn. I think a lot of people who, this podcast it's meant to be for everybody. People who have had so what you might call privileged lives often are as screwed up as people that have had, quotes, less privileged lives. There could be people who from very poor families in difficult parts of the UK who actually have had very functional lives, who've had parents that have supported them, loved them, and you could have people from billionaire families that are actually completely screwed up and end up on drugs because that family is dysfunctional. So you can't always say that it's about economic. As you said, you were from a nice house. You lived in a nice house when you were young. We shouldn't assume that just because you're from a poor or less well-off background that you're any more or less screwed up. And maybe there are stats to say that there are some commonalities, but anyone can be screwed up by their environment or their context.
I think as parents, it's always your intention. If you're present with your kids, and if you're intending to help them and nurture them, and it's that kind of thing that my oldest son's now a hypnotherapist. He's 37, Lee, and he's thriving. And I couldn't be more proud of him. He's a hypnotherapist. He's a jiu-jitsu blue belt. He's 2 away from his black belt. He's a solid family man. And I think, when all the hard work, and I say to the other 2, look, and they look up to him, they're so in awe of him, and he's a great role model. And I think that's the important thing for young boys, especially. They need good, solid role models, not just their parents. So for anyone who's got kids of that age, bring into your family other people that are role models, that are thriving, that the kids can look up to. That's really important, especially for boys. And so, I'm really lucky that I've got that. Lee's a role model to them. Yeah. And they adore him and look up to him. And it's worked out fantastically well.
Glenn, I would love we're going to talk about abundance and your sense of how hypnotherapy can lead into a sense of abundance and what that really means and how it plays out. Can I just deal with some real quick FAQs on hypnotherapy? Because you mentioned the stage hypnosis that you saw. I grew up in a world where, I think if I think about the classic, who is it that does I Can Make You Thin?
McKenna.
Yeah, so Paul McKenna. So the classic, I went to Paul McKenna stage shows and I saw the kind of making love to a broomstick type stuff. You got to leave your finger in the dike, otherwise the whole dike's going to bloody collapse. All that stuff with Paul McKenna. Let's just deal with some FAQs. What is going on there? What is actually happening?
So it's a certain type of hypnosis that's purely for entertainment.
Yeah.
And if you've got an audience of 100 people, within that audience, there's going to be 6 somnambulists.
Yep.
And they are people who go into very deep trances very quickly and follow suggestions very easily. And so the stage hypnotist is looking to get those 6 people up on the stage. And so what they do a means test. The first one is they do normally the hand clasp, where you put your hands together, your fingers are locking together, getting tighter and tighter. The more you try to pull them apart, the more locked they'll become. And I've done it. I've never really done stage hypnosis, but I've done that before. Yeah. And pretty much all the room are sitting there, can't pull their hands apart. So when that happens in an audience of 100, the ones that are still can't pull their hands apart, then the hypnotist will means test that group and increase
into the next round,
increasingly outrageous suggestions until he's left with the ones that are literally following every suggestion and will make love to a broomstick on stage.
Right.
So then he gets, and those people are, and it's not based on intelligence. They can be super intelligent or not so intelligent. It's really not about that. It's more that they've got, they're very suggestibility, very susceptible. Yeah. And so those people will respond to suggestions really quickly and easily. I did it once when I was starting out, and I set up a new clinic down in Sheerness back in the late 90s when I was starting out, and it was dead as a dodo. So I thought, I've got to get this clinic going because it's a long drive over here. So I went to the local paper and I asked to do an editorial. And to cut a long story short, the lady came along, and she wouldn't look in my eyes because she didn't understand what hypnosis was. She just thought,
she'd hypnotise her like
she
that.
She thought I was going to hypnotise her and
like get the watch out.
Yeah, exactly. And I wish to keep a watch as well. Yeah. Because if somebody expected it, then I'd pull it out.
Give it. Oh, yeah.
I'd do it. Yeah.
Because that's part of the suggestibility.
That's it. And it always worked. So anyway, this lady, she wouldn't look in my eyes. Oh, it's going to be a terrible interview because she doesn't believe in it or she doesn't understand it. But as it happened, they put it in the Sheerness Times, and there must have not been any news that week because it, page 2 or 3, big headline, hypnotist comes to Sheerness, and there was a picture of me staring into the camera with his cat's eye look. I had a little goatee beard at the time because I thought that's what you needed as a new hypnotherapist. I had books behind me and a suit, and it looked really powerful. Yeah. But I'd only seen about half a dozen clients at that point. But what it did, everyone that came to see me, they were primed because they thought what they'd seen in the paper, this powerful hypnotist has come to Sheerness. And I had loads of clients. The clinic was buzzing. And I had this one guy, I always remember, he came to see me, big Scottish fella. And he said, look, I really want to stop smoking. He said, I promised the wife I would. He said, but I'm nervous about hypnosis. And I said, look, don't worry. And I explained what it was. And I was building rapport with him because that's an important part of the session. And I was talking about football. He was into football. I was talking about football with him. And all of a sudden, I hadn't started the induction. He locked his eyes on mine and he started swaying. And he said, you're doing it to me now, in this broad Scottish accent. And he was swaying side to side. And he'd gone into this deep somnambulistic trance without me doing anything. And it was all the build up, the priming.
Expectation.
He'd put himself into the deepest trance state. And at that point, I could have given him any suggestion and he would have followed it to the T, because it's kind of what they do in stage shows. He was a somnambulist and he went there very quickly. Mm-hmm. And because I was kind of inexperienced, I was still using scripts, and I went through the script to tell him to stop smoking. But really, I didn't need to. I just could say, you'll never ever smoke again.
Just stop it.
You're never smoking again. That's the end of it. But I still went through this script. Yeah. But he did. He stopped smoking, and he went away, and he sent me a load of referrals, and it was great. But it kind of taught me a lot, that one session, how, the setup is so powerful, and that every client is different. Some people respond super quick, and others, you adjust the induction for every client.
Let's talk about the type of hypnosis that people can do. So for people watching this, Glenn, they can try and self-hypnotize. They can listen to your stuff on your website or Spotify, or they could find a hypnotist locally to them in Hastings or wherever it was that you were. I know, but what's the next steps? If someone wants to apply this today, what should they do?
I mean, if somebody wants to, they've got an anxiety issue, or they want to feel more mindful, or anything that's kind of more surface level, the recordings are a good place to start. They're as cheap as chips, and you can try that in the comfort of your own home. And the best way to do that is through repetition and compounding. So the more if you want to lose weight, so you can listen to the lose weight recording that I've got, and it's the compounding of that. So the more you hear those suggestions that you love eating healthy food, and you have a desire to exercise and be active every day, those suggestions become compounded in your unconscious. If there's a deeper issue why you're overeating and you're not in a state of fitness and health, then sometimes there's no substitute for one-to-one therapy. So you can seek out a good therapist locally. And all the tools are out there. We live in an amazing age. All that stuff we just talked about, that was the negative side of it. But we do live in an amazingly abundant age where we've got so much at our disposal. I mean, you and me, we grew up in the 70s. And
you had to have a cassette. Mail order cassette.
Mail order cassette, yeah. That was how my first recordings were on cassette.
Yeah, brilliant.
And, you'd have the man coming and knocking on your door, the Encyclopedia Britannica. That's how you got your
all
deeper knowledge.
All the knowledge in the world is in these books.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So that was our world. But now you think of, in that space of time, how much the world has transformed. It's mind-blowing, really, isn't it?
Part of consciousness, I guess, is not just in the moment and in the past. Consciousness is seeing where things are going, right? And I think part of, accessing intuition in the type of hypno work that you do is actually allowing people to realize that, look, where are we going? Where are we going with transhumanism? Where are we going with the automation of the human? Where are we going with human versus digital? So I think consciousness isn't just about what happened just when we were 5. It's all about saying, where the hell are we headed at current state?
Yeah, it's that as well, isn't it? We're living in such a fantastic age. And wasn't it Tesla that said he never, because he was called an inventor, wasn't he? But he said, I never invented anything. I just
channeled it, and
I just discovered things that were already there.
Yes.
And that's what these geniuses do. They don't actually invent anything. They're just able to have that level of consciousness that allows them to access things that are available to us.
It's like when we started Leon, people said, wow, good fast food. That's an incredible idea. And we were like, no, it's not. It isn't. It just exists in the right parallel universe. It already exists. We just need to help manifest that thing that really should exist. It's not we haven't created naturally fast food. That is just a thing that should exist that doesn't. Let's just get out of the way and allow it.
Yeah, and it's your consciousness.
Really,
like you said, it's your consciousness that allows you to have that vision and see something that is a solution to a problem.
Exactly. And it's just like we say, you don't create a true self, you access a true self that's there. With lots of business ideas, you're just accessing something that really the future, that is already in the future, if that makes sense, or should be in the future. And that's interesting.
And the great minds that have ever lived have been able to do that, haven't they?
Einstein said that about his own work, didn't he? And
his theory of relativity.
Not that I'm Einstein, but
No, he apparently came up with the theory of relativity when he was shaving, because he was in an altered state of consciousness, just doing something automatically. And the story is that he came up with the theory of relativity at that moment because his unconscious was open and awake at that time.
And that theta state, I think a lot of us feel. Some people say it's in the shower. Some people say it's when we're falling asleep. That's why it's good to have a notebook by our bed. Some people say it's when they're waking up. That theta state, that dream liminal state between waking and being awake and asleep. That's very important in hypnotherapy.
It's the hypnopompic state.
Right.
The hypnagogic state is when you go to sleep at night in between being fully awake and asleep.
Right.
And you're in that midway state, and it's the hypnagogic state. And it's a great time to listen to affirmations and take them on board. And
that's why people say, we had a doctor, a GP, fully trained GP, and she spoke about gut health, amazing science of gut health. And we said, what should people do about this? And she said, have a gratitude journal. She would say do it just as you're falling asleep, or think about 3 things you're grateful for. And she's like a proper scientist, proper doctor, proper GP. Yeah. And that was her solution for gut health.
Love
having a
it.
gratitude journal.
Brilliant. We need more doctors in the world like that, don't we?
Yeah. Claire Merrifield from Self, very brilliant person.
Yeah.
So let's talk about abundance. You wanted to talk about the link between hypnotherapy, which you say you can do, through your stuff, other stuff available online, and perhaps getting accessing a local hypnotherapist. But how do you think about abundance? Because I think I'd love to talk to you about that.
Yeah. So once I'd learned hypnotherapy and I understood the concept of it and how you could transform using hypnotherapy tools, I kind of realized that I could transform my life from the inside out. And, as I said, my life before I learned all that was very, I lived in a state of low consciousness when I look back. It was a belief of lack. It was a victim mentality. I was struggling. I expected bad things to happen and they did. And I never, I thought it was luck that you did well in life and you could create an abundant life. But once I had those tools in the bag and once I had understood the concept of manifestation, I then went on a completely different path and I started to believe that I could create a different life, a life where I'm abundant. I've got freedom. I've got a lot of love in my life. And that's what I wanted. I wanted that more than anything because I'd never had that. And so I set out a list of goals when I started, a list of clear goals, 5 material goals and 5 personal goals. And I would work on those goals every single day, to the point like that we talked about dead time. When I was in the shower, I'd be affirming these affirmations that would get me to these goals. I'd be doing mantras when I was driving on long journeys. And at that time I was living in a tower block in South London in Penge at the top of this tower block. And it was pretty grim. And
the top was the best or the worst? Is it like having the penthouse in the council block?
It had a beautiful view.
Nice view.
But the lifts did smell of piss.
Yeah, lifts did smell of piss.
But apart from that, it had a beautiful view of London. And so, I was driving a minicab as well around the West End of London at night, and I was making my living that and doing gigs as well. And from there, but I knew that I wanted to change those circumstances. So I would visualize this life, and I'd imagine that I was in a, loving, harmonious relationship. I had abundance. I had a great career. I was living where I wanted to live, living in a great place. And I would do that every single day to the point where, my wife would say to me at the time, she'd say that the bed would vibrate. I'd get so deep into self-hypnosis and so immersed in it that the bed would be vibrating.
What was that from? The energy or from the
energy? Yeah, pure energy. And I wasn't aware of it. It was only when I came out, she said she'd be sitting on the other side of the bed and she said the bed was vibrating. And so I even when I was, it's just a little bit graphic. I'm sorry to put this image in people's minds, but when I was laying in the bath, I heard that if you're underwater and you're projecting out energy, then it's more powerful in water. So I'd be under the bath, holding my nose, projecting out these affirmations.
Very good.
And it was all part of my day. Everything I did was building on what I wanted to do. So I had this, this holistic life that was all about abundance, positivity, prosperity, opening my heart, for the first time, because my heart was quite closed down because of what I'd been through as a kid. So I wanted to open my heart and project a feeling of love out. It sounds cheesy, but I used to do that. I walk down the street and see people and not judge them, take away any judgment, however they looked. And I just project a feeling of love to them as another soul on this journey, and all these little things I built into my life. And just over time, things completely changed. And to the point where I'm, got all those things and more, and I'm so grateful.
And there are rational ways that we can explain in what you might call scientific terms. I mean, of course, magic and science are constantly blurring and they're constantly converging and having a conversation with each other, magic and science. But in purely rational terms, you could say that if you if you buy a yellow Fiat, suddenly you'll see yellow Fiats everywhere because you recognize them. Yeah. So the filter is through your own experience. And so even if it's just expressing an idea, something you'd like to manifest, you then might spot an opportunity to achieve that thing that other people do not recognize as an opportunity to see that thing. So you could be in a meeting and someone could say, oh, let's say you want to play football. You might, and you set that as a manifestation. You might be walking past a notice board at work and there's a five-a-side, come and join five-a-side. And even at the most rational level, you don't have to believe in law of attraction. You don't have to believe in energy attraction. But even at a very understandable, practical level for the more rational out there, those things happen when you do those. Yeah,
I did actually do that. When we moved out here to Portugal, I saw a little advert in the local paper that said "walking football," and it was just up the road from and I hadn't played football since I was at school. But I went along, joined them, and I started playing walking football.
Well, there we go.
And I loved it.
I should mention that. I
played it for 4 years. I'm playing in a tournament in a couple of weeks in Villamora.
Wow,
I've loved it ever since.
Great.
And
well, there we go. So funny that I should mention that. Yeah,
that's a good point because when you're doing this work and you're projecting these thoughts out, you do. Yeah, even if it's not the law of attraction, you become where your attention goes, energy flows.
Yeah, exactly.
You see things, you see opportunities where other people might not, exactly as you just said.
I think it is worth, if people are having a difficult time right now, rather than me saying as a statement, is it worth people who are having a difficult time right now, A, doing the gratitude practice, B, doing the type of hypnotherapy you've described, accessing your stuff or a local hypnotherapist, also to write down the things they would like to manifest? I mean, what's your experience of, because I found a piece of paper that I wrote when I was 19, about 3 years ago. So I was 50, that's whatever it is, 31 years later. I could not believe the fact that my life had turned out as per that set of wish list, that wish list that I wrote when I was 19. Wow. It was incredible how similar it was. And I'd forgotten that I'd even programmed myself to want to manifest those things. I mean, what would you recommend? I mean, we're now getting into kind of like some quite interesting stuff now, or controversial stuff with manifestation and energy attraction. But what would you like to say beyond the very rational programming yourself to want to do football and you answer the advert? How would you describe this law of attraction? How would you describe abundance and energy and how it works for you?
So you made a good point there that you'd obviously had a lot of desire at that time in your life to achieve these things. And even though consciously you'd forgotten about them, but it was, you find the paper and you suddenly read it and you think, oh, wow, that was a big part of my dreams when I was younger. And then you get to a point in your life and you look back and I've done it. I've ticked those boxes. I made it happen. So I think that desire and that intention has got to be really strong from the beginning. As I said earlier, for me, the desire to live a happier, more abundant life was so strong. I was so done with failure and struggle and hardship that I wanted it so much. And I think that was a big part of the transformation in me, that I put all of my energy into changing my life, and nothing was going to stop it. And I wanted it so much. So I think you've got to start from that point. You've got to have that really strong desire. And then you've got to crystallize the things that you want to manifest in your life. So if you want to meet your perfect partner, or you want to lose weight, you want to get fit and healthy, you've got to write these goals down. You've got to write down the weight that you want to be in a year's time. You've got to write down, the income that you're going to have in a year's time, but write it in the present tense. So I am 10 stone 5 or whatever it is now. Write it down and then read it, look at it every day. I used to have smart cards on my computer, on my bedside cabinet, my bathroom mirror, and I used to read these things every single day and immerse myself in the whole abundance thing. I'd be reading books by people who'd gone from built multi-million-dollar businesses from nothing. And even to the point where I used to go to house auctions. I used to sit in a house auction and imagine that I was bidding on these houses, and I didn't have a pot to pee in at the time. I was flat broke, but I'd be sitting in these auctions imagining I was buying these houses.
That's really sweet. That's lovely.
And I did, and I had no envy around the people that were buying them. I never had that. I always thought if somebody was doing it, it would inspire me. I never wanted to ever feel that, envy or anything like that. I'd worked on that. And so, just immerse yourself in it, read books, make it a holistic part of your life, so you're habit stacking. You're doing more and more things that are taking you closer to those goals. And also another key point, which I've talked about a little bit already, is where you're also clearing any sabotage patterns that are stopping you from losing the weight you want to lose or becoming abundant. You've got to have that self-inquiry going on all the time and looking into things that are coming up in you, because they will. If you go on an abundance journey and you want to create something new, things will arise, and they can be things that are blocking you in some way. So it's always good to recognize those things and work through them. And sometimes you can do it yourself. Other times you need to work with other people to help you. It's just, being on that path and being really committed to what you want to achieve in life.
Amazing. And if we join the dots between some of the things we've been exploring on this podcast, it's not mental health and physical health are the same thing. They are linked. The mind and body are probably not separate as we imagine. And the physical health that comes from, the type of hypnosis, meditation, and work on your mind is incredible. And, again, Leo Prumim says that the mind can heal the body, or can heal itself and the body if it knows and becomes conscious of what to fix. And sometimes the mind itself, or our immune system and our cognitive capabilities inside our brain and the link to our gut, we've got to be more in tune with what's going on in our body, he says, so that our brain can fix it. But our body is being confused by multiple toxic inputs, be they emotional or be they physical toxic inputs, pollutants. But actually the brain has become confused. And that's why we are seeing so many different types of immunological diseases, because the brain has got confused about what to fix and how to fix. And becoming conscious at an emotional level allows the brain to access instinct, to access intuition. He says often if you've got a bad toe, the brain hasn't accessed its own intuition, its own instincts, and therefore it doesn't fix what needs to be fixed. So you're doing a great thing for physical health as well, Glenn. With what you're doing.
We're our own best healers, aren't we? Having that awareness, having the understanding of how to go inside and how to communicate with your inner self, it leads you to this awakening and this awareness of your body and what it needs. And I know you're big into detoxing and gut health and that kind of thing. And it's, again,
I'm looking at myself on this thing thinking, you wouldn't think it. I think I need another detox, but carry on. Yep. I'm big into it, but I think I need another one. Yeah.
Well, we're all a work in progress, aren't we? You're just discovering new things all the time. And that's the beauty, again, of this age that we live in. There's so much coming out. The biohacking world is so growing so quickly, isn't it? And we're learning so much about how to really get fit and healthy as you get older. And one of the guys I play football with, he's 81, this guy. Old Scottish fella called Tom. You wouldn't think an 81-year-old could play football. This guy, he's like the Ronaldo on the Algarve of that age. He's unbelievable. He's amazing. And he's very different to the other guys I play football with, because most of them, we play football and then we finish and, they'll have a couple of lagers. And it's only, I don't drink anymore. I've quit completely, don't drink at all. And I spoke to Tom one day, because I thought, he's doing something different. He looks different. He plays different to the other guys. He plays better than a lot of the 50-year-olds. And I said, Tom, what's your workout routine? And he said, I've got a fitness trainer that comes in twice a week. He said, I do Pilates as well. he said, I don't drink alcohol ever. And he's a Christian man. He goes to church once a week. And slowly the picture forms. He's doing everything to get himself to a position where at 81 he can still run around on a football pitch and play well. I've crashed into him a couple of times and I've bounced off him. He's not only playing, but he's strong. Very good. And he's my role model. You can take inspiration from people. It's always good to do that. In NLP, there's a technique called modeling, where you model your behavior on someone who inspires you and is inspirational. And Tom is that for me. I think I want to be 81, still charging around on a football pitch, playing tennis, paddle. And it's possible. It's possible to do that, but you've got to put the work in. What you do today creates your future.
Look, we know that, you're speaking of Ronaldo, we know that Ronaldo wasn't just practicing physically more than others, practicing out on the pitch more than others, practicing free kicks or whatever. He knew that it was good to approach things mentally. We know that if we look at Djokovic or we look at Federer, it's not necessarily they had necessarily more movement or muscle capability than other tennis players. The difference was here. And I think that's what people, even if people aren't going to be the world's number one, people can significantly improve their lives based on the stories they tell themselves and the sense of abundance that you've described.
I mean, Djokovic is an interesting character, isn't he? I mean, still playing at the highest level at 38. It's unheard of. He's the first one really in the men's game to do that. And, but if you follow him, you listen to what he does, and his nutrition is probably similar to the other tennis players, but it's, top notch. But he's also got a strong spiritual belief as well. He's very, when he talks, he's got that higher consciousness that we talked about earlier. Whether he channels it into a certain religion, I'm not sure, but he's got that higher consciousness. You can hear it when he speaks sometimes. And I think that's the X factor with him, that he's got that higher awareness, and it sort of infuses everything that he does. And it's that awakened consciousness that really is the superpower that we've all got hidden.
How about we set ourselves, let's describe this, let's meditate on this, let's with a sense of abundance make sure that within the next year we've got you, me and Djokovic on a podcast talking to him.
That would be amazing.
Let's set that as an intention, and let's see whether we can actually manifest that.
That would be the Dreamsville, wouldn't it? I'd love to speak to him. He's an amazing character.
I set myself the intention of speaking to you. I'm very, very grateful that has happened.
Thank you.
Thank you for responding in such a positive, abundant way when we offered you the opportunity to come on this podcast. Thank you for the invitation to Portugal, which I am going to take you up on in the spirit of abundance.
That would be lovely. You'd love
Glenn,
it out here.
Is there anything you would like to leave people with as we finish this wonderful conversation?
I think it's just the the belief that whatever situation you're in, if there's anything you're stuck with, just know that there's a solution to it. There's always a way out of it. But you've got to, use your inner resources to find whatever obstacle you've got in the way. I used to use that a lot, where I'd go into a state of self-hypnosis to ask for help, sometimes up to a higher power. You put it up there and ask for that solution to come. If it was a big problem and I was struggling with it and I couldn't get over it in my day-to-day life, I'd do that. I'd go into a meditative state or a state of self-hypnosis and ask for solutions and help and guidance. And I do believe that we get helped, on a spiritual level. We've got guides and helpers that are with us that, on a soul level want us to progress in life and to move forward. So that's another aspect, the spiritual part of us, activating that.
To what extent do people, would you recommend that if people are trying to manifest something with a sense of abundance, do they need a concrete plan as well to get to that? Or do you keep that in your peripheral vision, that manifestation, and actually have a level of trust that things are going to transpire? Where are you on that matrix between you've got to actually have a fucking action plan versus no, just allow things to happen?
I think have crystal clear clarity on what you want to achieve. So in your conscious mind, decide what is it you want, what career do you want, what life partner do you want, what abundance you want to create in your life. Write those things down as clear as you can. I think the mind responds to clarity in that way. So if you're crystal clear about the kind of lifestyle that you want in detail, when you're doing your manifestation work and you're projecting that out, it's much clearer. So I'd have that, and then I trust. I have a lot of trust. I've not got the kind of scientific mind really. I've more got the sort of metaphysical belief that things will happen that are right for you. They'll come along at the right time, and that kind of has always worked for me. I've always believed that when you create these goals and you project them out into the universe, that the right things will come at the right time. Well, I mean, I always, as a kid, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was 8, 9, 10, I had a best friend back then who was, we were both very ambitious, and we sat down one day as kids, like you do, and we said, what do you want to be? Who do you want to be when you're grown up? And I wanted to be Mark Bolan, and he wanted to be John Wayne. And in a roundabout way, I wasn't a pop star. I nearly got there, but I did
temporarily.
Temporary, I had a brief frame, but that wasn't the road. That wasn't what I needed.
Ultimately,
I ended up selling millions of hypnosis and meditation recordings. So in a way, I did become Mark Bolan. He ended up as this tough guy in the city, and he made it onto the rich list. He did so well, like, he's like a half billionaire now. And he kind of did become John Wayne because he was this tough guy, went into the city and he never got bullied. And so that was a simple example of, as kids, it's like you said, when you found your thing when you were 19,
incredible.
You did it. And as these little acorns,
little small intentions that grow, that are focused, but you don't necessarily have to have a detailed Gantt chart. You need to. I mean, I think one of the big things with Wu Wei, which is in martial art of not forcing, it means being in flow, allowing, and there is a delicate balance of action and inaction. There's a middle ground, isn't there, between action and inaction? So it's like you've got to meet the universe halfway, but you don't have to force to an extent where you are off balance. You've got to stay in flow.
If you start to force it, you push things away. You've got to allow that flow, that ebb and flow of abundance. And also when abundance comes, be generous with it. It's about giving and receiving.
The more you try and cling on to it, the more it owns you, right?
Exactly.
I was explaining Glenn this morning with an acupuncturist who we're going to interview. She's very important to me, called Wendy Mandy, and she was saying,
she mentioned Wendy.
She was saying that, I was saying the other day, I rang her, and she said, "Oh, hi, John. Sorry, could you lend me some money? Because I needed, I won't go too personal, but could you lend me some money for my house? And because I'm trying to move to Portugal," right? She's moved to Portugal. And I said, "Yeah, I'll lend you the money." Anyway, that's not why I was calling. And and we realised afterwards, if she'd been on the phone trying to call all the people who she thought could have lent her money, she wouldn't have been able to answer my call. So in her situation, ironically, allowing, trusting, and inaction was absolutely the right way for her to achieve the thing that she was trying to manifest. So
brilliant.
It is interesting how being in flow and not forcing, not going to the nth degree of forcing action can actually allow you to be in flow and to achieve what the sorts of thing you're explaining.
And not allowing possessions and money to control you, because that's then another trap once you get to that point. It's because there's plenty of ways, plenty of people and governments trying to take it off you.
Exactly.
You can get a bit over obsessed about keeping 100%. Hold of it.
I listen to you so much, your voice, and I think you've got something really wonderful, unselfish and authentic, and I love all the things that I've listened to you. I do I do the morning meditations. the chakra meditations, the solfeggio meditations, the intention meditations, and I really look forward to the time of day when I get to do that. I don't at the moment. I don't listen to anything, any other sort of like hypnotherapy stuff at all. It's all your stuff, mate. It's really brilliant.
Oh, wonderful!
It's so relatable.
Yeah, well, I'm like I said, once I became a hypnotherapist, and I had such a passion for it, such a love for what I did, and then by the time I started making recordings, it was 5 years after I became a hypnotherapist, and I'd seen 1,000 clients by that time.
Wow.
So I had a lot of experience in dealing people with one-to-one. And then when I started making recordings, it was just a random thought that I should, one day somebody asked me, could you record a session? And I still had a little reel-to-reel machine at home because I still like writing songs and recording them.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'll do something on the reel-to-reel, and then recorded it onto that, and then onto a cassette, onto a DAT machine, then a cassette. And then when I realized that I could sell these into local stores and they started to sell well, I thought, wow, there's something there, and it was just this light bulb moment went off. But I put all the passion and love that I had for helping people in my one-to-one therapy into those recordings. I wanted people to really sleep well at night, and I wanted them to lose weight. So I put my heart and soul into them, and
you can tell that.
Yeah, and I've loved making recordings. I still think I feel so blessed that I didn't become that pop star when I was 19, and I ended up finding this path where I'm able to make recordings that affect people in a positive way. It's something that I'm eternally grateful for, and I count my blessings.
Oh, I have to say that it's a real lesson in when you said you don't judge people when you're walking past them. I mean, I spent a few weeks with someone recently who was unfortunately still in that frame of mind where he would judge people as we were walking past them. Someone was fat or someone was whatever, and I was thinking, that comes from such an unhappy place, the fact that you're either judging people or you're blaming others for your situation, and this person does both. I won't mention his name, obviously. And the fact that you've approached this with not just a desire and intent to change your life, but a desire and an intent and a practice of doing that with love, that's the difference, right? Because people are grasping, people are desiring, people are actually entering another form of suffering if they're doing it out of greed and not out of love. And I think when I meet people like you, it's clear. We met another guy called Tony recently who was trying to commit suicide, actually, Glenn. I'll introduce you. He's a very nice guy. His story of getting out of his struggles with now with energy medicine, but initially with just deciding he was going to get himself out of that. He did that with love. There are pockets of people that they don't grasp or selfishly grasp their way out of a shit predicament. They do so with love. And it sounds like you genuinely did that with love during your rehabilitation.
It was interesting what you said there about the guy that you knew that does criticize people when he sees them and, says these things. And it's something that, with consciousness, with awareness, you kind of break out of that. And even though that might be a habit and you still might flip into that, the consciousness and the awareness around what you're actually doing can take you out of that. You work on that part of yourself. If you have got that in you, then you can work on that actual part. I grew up in a South London family who were massive piss takers and, very, when I look at the lessons I had from, adults in my life growing up, it was a lot of that was very negative. And so I kind of grew up in, and I was a product of that. So I had to work on that side of myself. And, once you kind of, as cheesy as it sounds, discover the power of love and what an amazingly powerful force that is, you operate from that place, you find that the world changes. It responds differently.
I've got a meeting now, which is about spreadsheets, and I'm going to have to go on there, and I'm going to say to myself, I love these spreadsheets. I love these spreadsheets. So I'm going to go and be all positive and abundant about frigging spreadsheets. So that's my next meeting. But I just want to say, I don't just love spreadsheets. I love you, but I don't even have to fake that.
Oh, bless you, man.
I don't have to fake it. It's true.
Yeah, it's so easy to chat to you.
Yeah.
It really is. It made.
Oh, bless you.
It's a lovely flow we got into there. It was really brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, it's all instructed by you, my mate. All the flow that I have is based on. Well, obviously,
it's all
I do
energy.
it.
John, it's all energy. You know, we're on a similar trajectory. And a similar place in our lives. So it's easy to chat, isn't it? When you've got the same aspirations.
Well, thank you for helping me to talk to you, and thank you for helping so many people that are going to benefit from this. Really appreciate it, my mate Glenn. And we're going to do some more, right? I mean, hopefully I'll come to see you, but more podcasts about all the other amazing stuff. Self-hypnosis, let's get into that next time, man.
Yeah.
But so much to talk about. It's opened up so many amazing avenues for me. Thank you.
Bless you, man.